Christmas is often painted as the season of joy, a time for family, faith, and festive traditions. It's when lights twinkle on snowy streets, carolers sing about peace and goodwill, and kitchens fill with the comforting aromas of holiday feasts. For many, it's a moment to pause, connect with loved ones, and soak in the magic of the season. But as they say, expect the unexpected. And sometimes, the unexpected can be quite strange. From disasters to downright bizarre events, here are 15 of the most strange and terrible things to ever happen during the holiday season. Let's kick things off with number 15, Library of Congress burns. Some children may sigh in disappointment when they unwrap a Christmas present only to find a book instead of the latest iPad or PS5. But for the Library of Congress, books were precisely what they desperately needed after a catastrophic Christmas Eve fire in 1851. A faulty chimney flue sparked the blaze, which destroyed 35,000 of the library's 55,000 volumes, including nearly two-thirds of Thomas Jefferson's personal collection. Jefferson's books had been donated to replace the volumes lost when the Capitol was burned during the War of 1812. Sadly, history repeated itself in the most devastating way. This wasn't the library's first brush with fire. In 1825, an unattended candle nearly caused similar destruction, but the flames were contained. Congress, deeming fireproofing too expensive, never acted. The 1851 fire proved that decision tragically short-sighted. Still, the Library of Congress rose from the ashes, reopening in 1853 with a new fireproof room, finally learning that some lessons come at a devastating cost. Number 14, Congo Christmas Massacre. Christmas is supposed to bring peace and joy, but in 2008, the Democratic Republic of Congo endured a nightmare instead. The Lord's Resistance Army, a violent cult, unleashed a brutal assault across Haut-Uele province as families prepared for the holiday. Beginning on Christmas Eve, villages were set ablaze, and the destruction was relentless. Over 600 men, women, and children were massacred in ways too horrific to fully convey, entire families torn apart by unspeakable violence. The LRA abducted dozens of children to use as soldiers or slaves, while women suffered appalling acts of sexual violence. Survivors fled into the forests, but many returned to find their homes in ashes and their loved ones buried in hastily dug graves. For those villages, Christmas became a symbol of pain instead of celebration. The scars of the massacre linger to this day, a sobering reminder of the resilience required to endure such cruelty and the cost of unchecked violence. Number 13, Star Wars Holiday Special. Well, sometimes what you plan and what actually happens are two very different things. Just ask George Lucas. In 1978, the Star Wars creator thought it'd be a great idea to gift fans with a Star Wars at Holiday special. Unfortunately, this holiday treat turned into one of the most cringe-worthy TV specials of all time. The plot? Chewbacca's family, his wife Mala, father Itchy, and son Lumpy celebrate Life Day, a Wookiee holiday that appears to mix elements of Thanksgiving and Christmas. The special kicked off with a 10-minute scene of Wookiee speak, with no subtitles to explain the grunts and howls. Viewers were confused and frankly annoyed. And if that wasn't bad enough, we got bizarre guest performances, including an uncomfortable scene with Diahan Carroll and Chewbacca's grandpa Itchy, which was, well, let's just say it was awkward for a family-friendly show. Lucas, horrified by the backlash, said, "If I had the time and a sledgehammer, I would track down every copy of that show and smash it." Number 12, Beagle 2, Spacecraft Lost. Well, this isn't the most terrifying thing that happened on Christmas, but it certainly comes close. In 2003, the European Space Agency launched its Mars Express orbiter, carrying a special cargo, the Beagle 2 spacecraft. The plan? To land on Mars and open up on Christmas Day. Talk about a holiday gift from the stars. Everything went according to plan initially. On December 19th, Beagle 2 was released, rocketing toward the Martian surface at over 12,000 miles per hour. Equipped with parachutes and airbags, it was designed to land softly and unfold solar arrays to establish contact with Earth. But when no signal came through, scientists feared the worst. For months, they had no clue what happened. It wasn't until 12 years later that NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter snapped a photo of Beagle 2's landing site, showing it had actually made it. But the solar panels failed to deploy. A Christmas miracle that never quite was. Number 11. Indian Ocean Tsunami. December 26, 2004, what should have been a calm post-Christmas day became the backdrop for one of the deadliest natural disasters in history. A massive 9.1 magnitude earthquake hit the ocean floor off Indonesia, unleashing the energy of 23,000 atomic bombs. The ocean trembled, and at first, there were no signs of danger. But that calm was deceiving. As the tsunami waves silently spread across the open water, people went about their lives, unaware of the monstrous force heading their way. Then came the eerie signs. The ocean began pulling back, exposing the sea floor. A strange roar filled the air like a jet engine, and suddenly the waves, some nearly 100 feet high, smashed into the coast. No warning system was in place. By the time the destruction ended, over 230,000 people across 15 countries had perished, leaving behind devastation worth $14 billion. Number 10. Underwear Bomber. Holiday travel can be stressful enough, but the nightmare of a terrorist attack adds a new layer of anxiety for passengers. On Christmas Day 2009, passengers aboard a flight from Amsterdam to Detroit had a terrifying brush with disaster, though not the outcome anyone feared. Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalab, a 23-year-old Nigerian, attempted to detonate a bomb hidden in his underwear as the plane approached Detroit. Passengers heard what sounded like a firecracker, a failed attempt to set off the bomb. Although flames engulfed Abdul Muttalab and spread to the plane's interior, quick-thinking passengers tackled him, extinguishing the fire. The plane landed safely, and disaster was averted. Abdul Muttalab, radicalized by Yemen-based cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, was sentenced to life in prison for his attempt to take 289 lives. Despite the terror, all passengers and crew made it home for the holidays, a reminder of resilience and bravery in the face of danger. Number 9. Black Christmas. Christmas Day, 1941, marked the end of one of the most harrowing chapters for the defenders of Hong Kong during World War II. For months, British, Canadian, Indian, and Hong Konger troops braced for an anticipated Japanese attack. The assault began on December 8th, and despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the Allied forces mounted a fierce resistance. For over 2 weeks, the defenders fought valiantly, but the Japanese forces steadily advanced. By December 25th, Allied soldiers were cut off from supplies, the city's water mains were destroyed, and its power plant lay in ruins. Amid mounting casualties and dwindling hope, British Governor Sir Mark Young reluctantly surrendered at 3:30 p.m. that Christmas Day. By the end of the brutal battle, approximately 4,000 soldiers from both sides had perished. The fall of Hong Kong was a grim reminder of the war's devastation, leaving scars on the city and its defenders that would last long after the white flags were raised. Number 8. Charlie Chaplain. Now, Black Christmas isn't just the name of a horror movie, it's how fans of Charlie Chaplain felt on December 25, 1977. On that day, the world lost one of its most beloved entertainers. Chaplain, the master of silent film comedy, passed away at age 88, surrounded by family in his Switzerland home. Chaplin's career was legendary, known best as the Tramp. With his bowler hat, cane, and oversized shoes, he brought laughter to millions through his pantomime and slapstick genius. But he wasn't just about humor. Chaplin tackled serious topics, famously skewering Adolf Hitler in The Great Dictator, 1940. His work wasn't just entertaining, it was revolutionary. How much did people love him? A New York theater played nothing but his films for nearly a decade, and Paris declared a public holiday for the premiere of The Kid in 1921. By the time Chaplain took his final bow, he'd appeared in 80 films and left an indelible mark on the history of cinema. His passing turned Christmas into a day of mourning for fans around the world. Number 7. Tangi train disaster. On Christmas Eve 1953, while many New Zealanders were preparing for a holiday, a disaster unfolded on Mount Ruapehu. The volcanic crater burst, sending a deadly lahar, a mix of mud, water, and volcanic debris, racing down the mountain. The torrent overwhelmed the dam holding back the crater lake, surging downriver and severely weakening the rail bridge at Tangi. Unaware of the destruction ahead, an express train packed with 285 holiday travelers barreled toward disaster. The engineer spotted the damaged bridge too late. While he managed to brake in time to save the rear carriages, the front of the train plunged into the icy Wangehu River below. Sadly, 151 people lost their lives in New Zealand's worst rail tragedy. Witnesses described the haunting sight of lit carriages floating down the river before the lights flickered out. Let's move to number 6. Klux Clan. Here's a piece of Christmas trivia that's bound to dampen the holiday cheer. The Ku Klux Klan, one of America's most infamous hate groups, was founded on Christmas Eve 1865. While most were celebrating peace on Earth, 6 Confederate veterans in Pulaski, Tennessee, gathered to form a secret society rooted in fear and intimidation. Led by Nathan Bedford Forrest, a former Confederate general turned Grand Wizard, the Klan sought to resist Reconstruction efforts, which aimed to secure equality for Black Americans. In its early years, the Klan waged a campaign of terror, targeting Black citizens and their allies with threats, violence, and lynchings. The group's brutality prompted Congress to pass the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, allowing military intervention to suppress its activities. While Reconstruction ended and the Klan's influence waned, the group resurfaced in the 1920s and again during the Civil Rights Movement. Today, splinter groups remain active, a troubling legacy of an organization born on a night meant for goodwill. Number 5. The Italian Hall Disaster. On Christmas Eve 1913, the Italian Hall in Calumet, Michigan was filled with laughter and celebration. Copper miners and their families, weary from their fight for fair treatment in the mines, gathered for a moment of holiday joy and solidarity. The hall overflowed with children playing, adults chatting, and music filling the air. Then chaos struck. Someone yelled, "Fire!" Panic spread like wildfire, even though there was no blaze. Hundreds of people surged toward the narrow staircase, the only way out. In the ensuing stampede, 73 lives were tragically lost, most of them children, crushed as the crowd pressed forward in blind fear. No one knows who shouted or why, but the Italian Hall disaster left a permanent scar on the community. What was meant to be a night of unity became a creepy reminder of how easily fear can turn joy into pure tragedy. To this day, its memory serves as a call for compassion and safety in public spaces. Number 4. The USSR invade Afghanistan. Imagine a Christmas Eve not filled with joy and peace, but with the thunder of tanks and the roar of jet engines. On December 24, 1979, Afghanistan faced such a night as the Soviet Union launched its invasion. What began as a covert operation to support a crumbling communist government quickly became one of the bloodiest chapters in Cold War history. Soviet special forces stormed the Darul Aman Palace, assassinating Afghan President Hafizullah Amin and seizing control in a move shrouded in deception. The invasion devastated Afghanistan. Entire villages were reduced to rubble by relentless bombings, scorched earth tactics, and fields of deadly landmines, many of which still plague the region today. Millions were displaced, creating a refugee crisis, and hundreds of thousands lost their lives. Meanwhile, the US, eager to counter Soviet influence, funneled weapons to the Mujahideen, igniting a fierce proxy war. What unfolded was a decade of despair, a stark reminder that even in times of celebration, war spares no one. Number 3. Iroquois Theater Fire. Well, what does a fun Christmas outing at the theater look like? For the nearly 2,000 people who packed Chicago's Iroquois Theater on December 30th, 1903, it was supposed to be an afternoon of laughter and music with the hit production Mr. Bluebeard. Instead, it became a nightmare. During the second act, a faulty light bulb sparked a fire that quickly spread to the drapes and set the stage ablaze. Flaming debris rained down as panicked actors fled, and the orchestra desperately tried to calm the crowd with music. Chaos erupted as terrified theatergoers scrambled for exits, only to find many hidden behind curtains or locked to stop freeloaders. In the darkness and smoke, hundreds were trapped. By the time the fire was extinguished, 575 lives were lost, with dozens more succumbing to injuries. The tragedy sparked reforms like clearly marked exits and doors that open outward, changes that continue to keep audiences safe to this day. Number 2. Christmas Flood. Christmas storms usually mean someone drank too much eggnog and spilled their secrets. But in 1717, Northern Europe faced a storm of truly biblical proportions. As the clock struck 1 a.m. on Christmas morning, a monstrous North Sea surge broke through defenses, flooding everything from Holland to Denmark. The rising waters weren't picky. They swept away people, livestock, and entire homes without a second thought. Desperate families clung to trees and rooftops as rain, hail, and relentless winds turned the landscape into a nightmare. The water climbed as high as 10 feet, leaving little hope for survival. By the time the storm delivered its final blow on December 27th, the devastation was staggering. Over 13,700 lives were lost, and countless others were left homeless and heartbroken. It's hard to imagine a Christmas worse than socks from Grandma, but this one tops the list. The Christmas flood of 1717 wasn't just bad. It was a catastrophic reminder of nature's unforgiving and unimaginable power. Now let's move to Number 1. Zinin Earthquake. Imagine you are bundled up against the biting cold of winter, enjoying the festive cheer that fills the air, when the ground beneath you begins to tremble violently. This was the grim reality for the people of Erzincan, Turkey, on December 27, 1939. A catastrophic 7.8 magnitude earthquake tore through the region, reducing entire villages to rubble. Over 32,000 lives were lost in an instant, and tens of thousands more were left injured or homeless, braving the freezing winter with nothing but despair and hope to cling to. As Christmas bells rang in other corners of the globe, Erzincan's silence was broken only by the cries of survivors and the groaning collapse of buildings. From any point of view, the Erzincan earthquake was a truly devastating event that left its mark on both Turkey and the history of seismic activity. Just like any other natural disaster, it shattered lives and caused unimaginable destruction. If you find this video interesting, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.